TV47 News and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. Karibu sana to the Morning Cafe. My name is Freddy Ndimuli. How hot is the coffee where you are?
And I'm usually Stanley Nyerungiti. It's a wonderful Wednesday morning. And this particular day, we discuss matters relationships, kama kawaida, and just getting to know what are the unique responsibilities that even a man has in a relationship, and also even a woman. Taking a look at the unique...
Well, a woman, because the man usually carries the relationship. We carry this life.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And, matters Test Wednesday for today, but then we take you all the way from the kitchen, but then today we take you to the farm, just to understand the vegetables that you have in the kitchen. Where do they come from?
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Interesting. Something to look forward to on State of the Nation today. Nurdin Kagai, advocate of the High Court, Susan Wanjiku, political analyst, and Alex Mwathi as well. Do stand by for that conversation later on.
Oh, yes.
A quick look at the headlines this morning.
And definitely start with the Standard.
Yes, if our director can help us. Yes, the Standard has gone with the food crisis looms. That's a big headline on the front page of the Standard. Matters food security. Coming also at a time when we're having the Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit happening at the KICC. That's on the front page of the Standard. On the Daily Nation, floods, plague, the threat of cholera, as state confirms 34 cases. And this is something we've been discussing, the fact that we are now staring at a possible cholera outbreak. That's the Daily Nation. Tutamlilia nani? Swala kuu pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Wahanga wa mafuriko na kwingineko. People Daily, finally white smoke.
Over the doctor's strike, they go with a whole different kind of a conversation for them. While other papers are looking at the whole effects of the whole floods. Onto the Star, which also goes with the same.
Tough questions for Linturi in ejection bid. Yes, the committee has begun sitting for the next 10 days. On the Business Daily, top insurance firms miss earnings release deadline. Matters business. Let's cross over to Uganda. Museveni gives traders options. The president promises a win-win solution on matters taxation. Yes, taxation in Uganda is something very key. And it features on the front page. Let's cross over to Tanzania a bit. We'll come back to Uganda. Government's education priorities as budget beefed up to 1.96 trillion shillings. And if you had that kind of money in Kenya, well, cool off. This is Tanzanian money.
Will be some boggling money like we were taking a look at yesterday.
300 billion Kenyan money.
Still in Tanzania, CCM yachochea moto Chadema, masuala ya siasa pale, and their political parties.
Finally, let's go back to Uganda. Traders gain losses in meeting with Museveni matters taxes. The traders were given audience in State House Kampala, and President Museveni sat them down and akawauliza munataka nini. I wish that could happen here. The traders are called to State House and akawauliza, okay, when it comes to the taxes, what do you want?
And finally, we can take a look at Rwanda as well and see what the New Times has for us today. And they're asking, can Rwanda turn the tide on music royalties? Let's go with quite some very different kind of conversations. And when you see the president...
But some very progressive headlines on the New Times in Rwanda.
It would be really rare to see Kenyan Daily really going such, and even asking Rwandan artists still struggling to collect royalties, demanding rules to be enforced to benefit from their creative work.
And this image of Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, I think has really done well when it comes to town hall meetings. He really does well in those. He looks very relaxed, can speak the local language very comfortably and explains things in ways many people can't. Paul Kagame there, urging the youth to volunteer and join efforts for collective development. That is in Rwanda today.
Right, let's take a look at now the traffic and see how things are.
And this is even much clearer. You see the size of the screen. Wow, just look at that. Just look at that. Look at that. And this is how Nairobi is looking this morning. Most of the tributaries into town are green. So nothing much to report about. But there is a bit of concern here in Limuru. You can see this yellow, meaning there's a bit of a slowdown. For this time early morning, if you see this kind of a slowdown here, yes, could be a fog. That means the speeds by motorists are very low. This could end up in a snarl up later on, if at all the fogging persists. That is just one possibility. But apart from that, after that, coming all the way into town past Tungiri, all the way past Gitaru, Udhiru, all the way ABC Place, Westlands, into town. Nothing much to report about, and that's okay. So far, so good. Let's cross over and take a look at the other side of town, and this is Thika Road. Thika Road has had a bit of concerns over matters flooding, but there's not been any rain this past 2 nights.
2 days, 2 days.
So if you go as far back as Githurai, nothing much to report. It's smooth all the way. Smooth all the way past KCA University, past the Utali Drift into Muthaiga interchange and Pangani interchange as well. So that bit of the road is good. So far, Thika Road is good. Kiambu Road is looking good as well, even past the bypass, past Ridgeways, DCI, and into town. Let's cross over, take a look at Mombasa Road. This is Mombasa Road. I just love this screen. Wow.
You're having a
You don't have to struggle looking for any. As far back as Mlolongo all the way into town. A bit of a snarl up here at Gateway Mall, but it's on your way out of town. The road leading towards town is looking good, past Cabanas, past Imardaima, past Next Gen, and all the way into town, even at the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. There's nothing to report about. I don't know, maybe ni mapema sana. Okay, Langata Road 2 is looking green from Galleria Mall all the way past the bypass, the Langata Road all the way up to the T-Mall roundabout. It's looking quite nice this morning. We've been having a bit of a trouble here, but nothing much to report about today. And Magadi Way looking good as well. Ngong Road also looking good all the way from the bypass, past Junction Mall, past Prestige Plaza, all the way to the City Mortuary roundabout. It's looking good. Finally, Jogoo Road. Hapa kuna kuanga na shida. But today, not much to report about. You can see it's looking much better.
Oh, yes.
Okay, now once you widen it, there are bits of red, sections of red.
Understandably, the bus station. So
yes, so this is a section at the junction to Buruburu, probably buses there.
Yeah.
Past that at Makadara, another bus stop there. But after that, all the way green up until you get to the City Stadium roundabout. A bit of a slowdown, understandably so because of the roundabout. After that, if you get into Landis Road, past Gikomba, past Machakos bus station, and into town. It's looking good. So far, so good. Traffic in Nairobi, nothing to worry about this morning. As at what time?
8 minutes was the top.
8 minutes.
8 minutes was the top.
So it's still early, but if you want to make it into town, this is the best time.
Oh, yes. And it seems as if the fact that the average rainfall that we've been reporting na imepungua and making sure that the traffic is looking as fantastic as possible.
Ikae tu hivyo hivyo. Because hata watu walisema kama kuna mtu, if anyone had prayed for the rain, I think they overprayed. Now you can pray for money in our pockets.
And something else. Let's take a look at how the weather forecast is going to be looking like according to the Kenya Meteorological Department. This is according to, as of yesterday, all the way to today at around 9 a.m. and see just how things are going to be. So yesterday I had told you that chances of it raining in most parts of the countries is actually going to be low. You can take a look at 3/4 is going to be getting less than 2 millimeters. So that's actually
you can actually see them up. There was a lot of red and almost yellow and red yesterday and last week. Now you can see it's a lot of green. So it means that even the spots that are getting rain
are quite minimal. Yes, could take a look at, I think, the northern bits of Nairobi, sections of Kiambu as well. Yesterday, I think, was it Murang'a, that the whole of Murang'a was red. Right now, it's just a section of it as well. Nyandarua, the southern bit of it. Bits of Meru, Tharaka Nithi as well, and a section of also Kirinyaga, just getting average rainfall of around 70 all the way to 100 millimeters. But then, for 100 millimeters for today, it is going to be bits of Nairobi, sections of it, and that is today until around 9 a.m. But then chances of that happening, because today morning it's not raining really, so chances of that happening again is quite slim.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
But you do still expect some showers later on in the day, so kuwa gangari.
Some light showers of the same. That is the weather update for you this morning, as at 10 minutes past the top of the hour, so stick around until 9 a.m. So in case you just, trying to see if you're going to be carrying an umbrella, that is how things are looking like.
All right. Do you have the day's diary?
Definitely. For today's diary, it is the second day of the Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit. It started yesterday. It did see quite a number of the leaders from Africa as well, and as also Cabinet Secretary of Agriculture, Mithika Linturi, just giving a press briefing on the same that is expected today.
Yes, CS for Agriculture. Mithika Linturi, who's being impeached because of fertilizer, is attending this Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that just makes me happy.
On the diary, also getting into matters health, first of all, today is World Ovarian Cancer Day. Yes. So we'll be telling you even the whole course of today. Stick around in our subsequent bulletins, telling you why we are celebrating and just commemorating this particular day, World Ovarian Cancer Day. And then it's a whole white smoke for the striking doctors. It's today's 50. Today's day 50. What?
I'm not so sure. It was 50 by Friday, plus 3 or 4, probably 54th day.
It was 50 on Thursday last week. So, quick maths up.
Thereabout.
Yes, thereabout. But I mean, so far 50 plus days. Today we do expect to see the meeting between the Council of Governors as well as Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union meeting today. And if this particular meeting goes well, they might be signing an agreement to have this strike called off. That and much more coming up in our subsequent bulletins on the same.
Right now, let's take a look at the dailies.
Yes. Right. Ni kama leo mtu wetu wa delivery ya gazeti.
Na kujanyesha sasa sijui atasema ni nini imemchelewesha. But anyway, I do have the e-paper and I will start off with the Standard. On the front page of the Standard, food crisis looms. Food shortage fears after floods sweep through nation's agricultural heartlands, destroying food reserves, thousands of acres of crop and damaging irrigation schemes, exposing Kenyans to high prices and steep losses. And you'll realize that the conversation now is moving from dealing with the flooding issue to now the repercussions of the same. Now what happens, the aftermath of the flooding situation. They're looking at a possibility of food shortage and destruction of crops, irrigation systems, and also the carrying away of, what do you call it, fertile soils.
Yes.
Yes. That's the front page of the Standard, and it has images there of farmers with their farms destroyed and the crops also destroyed. There's a farmer there looking at her farm, her tomato farm. And they're saying that 2,000 acreage and a rice crop submerged by water in Mwea irrigation scheme.
That's a
really
lot
sad.
of
In Perkera scheme in Baringo, maize seed crop contracted by Kenya Seed destroyed. Livestock not spared either, with floods carrying away small stock. And floods sweep away food reserves and harvests of households, even those stored already. But there's one story that really has caught my attention, and it features on the front page of the Standard this morning. Kipchoge.
The Kipchoge story.
Kipchoge, yes. And the issue about online abuse, and he says, online abuse shocked me. Olympic champion says he feared for his life and those of his family members after he was trolled following Kelvin Kiptum's death. That story is on page 4 of the Standard. This is one story you need to read about the effects of online bullying and abuse.
He was being interviewed by the international media, BBC, and you can take a look at the video. He was actually, it reached a point, he broke down. He was just, he had his head, bowed down, and saying how at that time he had called the mother just during all this time. And it actually even affected his performance in was it the Rotterdam Marathon? One marathon that he was participating after.
Kenyans online, and we are famous, and we are known for being bullies, and we are known to have actually, we can really fight. KOT, KOX, are known and they are feared. But the
And
problem
the whole
is,
greed of,
it would appear that sometimes we even turn against our very own. It's no longer an international banter.
Because at that time, people had come with some very crazy theories on the same, just saying, oh, you know, Kipchoge had done this because of ABCD, and wow.
It's a very sad story indeed there. On the front page of the Standard. Other highlights on the top strip, Mount Kenya power rivalry grows as Kuria joins the fray, matters politics. In business, tea farm plans sale of stake to farmers, and that's Lipton Tea. And finally, in sports, Ten Hag not ready to leave. Munataka kuendelea naye?
I know because I have the physical papers.
Let me take a look. Let me see what the back page looks like of the Standard. Just a copy of the Standard. Yes. If you flip the back page, yes, Madrid. Oh, okay, not Ten Hag. Madrid must improve to overcome Bayern in Champions League. PSG. They lost yesterday to
Borussia Dortmund. Yes.
So,
Bayern's game is today.
Yes, Real Madrid versus Bayern Munich. That's a big game.
That's a big game.
At the Santiago Bernabeu Stadium at 10 p.m. Lovers of Champions League, something to look forward to tomorrow. Yes, the mighty English forward Harry Kane against Real Madrid's Brazilian forward Vinicius Jr.
And because you're looking for the Ten Hag story, it's on page 31.
No, we don't have time for small teams. Let's move on to...
Yesterday, challenged myself wearing a Manchester United jersey, and I was.
Did you?
You
should have.
Oh, yes.
You should have.
Actually, I went to the gym with it because the trainer said no pain, no gain.
Yeah.
You get it?
A lot of emotional damage.
Oh, yes. Yes. That's the Standard. Let's take a look at the Daily Nation. They're going with the whole effects and repercussions of these floods. Talking about cholera outbreak, the state confirms 34 cases and a whole epidemic threat. The relenting rains pounding several parts of the country have brought death and devastation upon many families and caused massive destruction of property and public infrastructure. But yesterday's confirmation of cholera cases in Tana River County, in addition to the floods and the ongoing doctor strike, may just ignite a perfect storm in the country. More is in pages 6 and 7. But a whole interesting angle that Daily Nation has inside there is the photo of King Charles III, who emphasized with Kenyans and President Ruto over the whole crisis. Other highlights on this front page, on the bottom, even as schools have been closed and the whole postponement, which is to happen on Monday, they talk about the online learning class divide between the academies as well as public schools. The quota figure there, 32 billion Kenyan shillings. This is what the government spent to equip public primary schools with tablets, laptops, projectors, routers, as well as connecting them to the whole national grid.
Umeiona wapi? Umeiona wapi?
And I think last week there was a whole conversation of the public Wi-Fi hotspots that the government has been launching.
You know, the very interesting thing.
And commonly the people saying that they are either not working or the public Wi-Fi that the Kenya Kwanza government had launched is quite slow.
Okay. On this online thing and the class divide between academies and public schools, I've seen some schools in Nairobi where they're even bringing the school bus with teachers to residential areas where their students are. And they're telling students, come to the school bus and we do some exercises. You see now that's a difference between public schools and private schools.
Yeah.
So yes, a class divide there on the front page.
Still on the front page of the Daily Nation, on the right, something that was happening yesterday in Russia. Vladimir Putin was sworn in for the new 6-year term. He was re-elected, was it last month? Early last month. They say in power as president or prime minister since 1999. President Vladimir Putin is locked in a confrontation with the Western countries. He accuses of using Ukraine as a vehicle to try to dismember Russia. Was in pages 227. Back to Kenya.
It means that Putin could actually be in power for more than 30 years, from 1999 to about +6.
Because +6 right now, yeah.
31 years, 30, probably.
Yeah.
30, 31 years.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So mimi nikigonga ma-30.
Wewe ulizaliwa ukapata Putin hapo. Unagonga 30 bado yuko hapo.
Nitapata watoto bado yuko.
Bado yuko. Chunga, anaweza pata hata ingine after that.
Back to Kenya, on the front page, on the right, this was the whole controversial city pastor James Wanjohi was at the front page of this paper some weeks back, and they say the pastor has been questioned over 60 million, or rather 600 million Kenyan shillings fake foreign jobs scam. Back to the whole Linturi saga, and they say on the top strip of this paper, as Linturi trial, quote unquote, starts, MP fears for his life, and National Cereals and Produce Board, a boss, fails to stop his arrest of a fake fertilizer saga, and one of the MPs has threatened to have the donors sanction him if he doesn't resign. So we wait to see how that is going to be. Still on the top strip, they talk about matters KRA, and that cues us to head to the back page, where they say landlords, small traders feel the pinch of housing levy. And KRA says landlords will pay 1.5% of the rent received, and the levy will be from gross sales in the whole businesses. This really has to do with matters economy, and Kenyans should embrace themselves for possible rent hikes. And this is really going to be touching on most of the SMEs and small and medium enterprises, mostly in the whole urban centers. Because if your landlord, if KRA comes to the landlord and says you really have to pay the whole 1.5%, this means that the landlord will have to hike the price for if you have your goods and you sell. And this might be a possibility that most of these traders will have to lock their businesses. And that is the Business Daily on...
That's a Daily Nation.
Daily Nation, just a nutshell of the Daily Nation.
Yes, I do have the Business Daily with me, and on the front page is a totally different story. Matters top insurance firms missing earning release deadline. It's a new accounting rule which creates compliance nightmares. Some insurers are seeking regulators not to delay results. And yes, for insurance firms, they make it to the front page. How Sri Lanka Browns beat Sasini to Lipton tea deal. Sri Lanka's Browns Investment PLC dangled a Community Development and Empowerment CAD in the battle for Lipton tea assets in Kenya, helping the multinational firm to beat Sasini to the deal that would hand it control of 20% of the country's tea industry. Yes, matters sale of that big tea company, Lipton Tea. The image of CS for Agriculture, Mithika Linturi, also features on the front page of the Business Daily. Agriculture CS, that's a photo of him when he appeared before the National Assembly Select Committee, which has now begun the impeachment trial and should be reporting back to the House next week. Interesting times. More highlights on the ticker. Landlords feel the pain of affordable housing levy. Small businesses and landlords have started feeling the weight of the affordable housing levy after the KRA clarified they will pay 1.5% of rent and gross sales. Elsewhere, Special Economic Zone firms get 1.9 billion shilling tax incentives in 9 years. And Kenya EU launch talks on data sharing. And finally, Equity Insurance Unit jumps to 4th slot. And that's a Business Daily.
Tutamlilia nani kwenye gazeti la Taifa Leo? Right, so even as we continue on Taifa Leo, there we have it. Tutamlilia nani? Nyumba zao zimebomolewa au kusombwa na maji, mimea imeharibika shambani, mifugo imeangamia, shughuli za riziki zimekwama, huku kipindupindu na magonjwa mengineyo yakianza kulipuka. Mengi ni katika ukurasa wa pili, wakiangazia athari za mafuriko kwa mimea, mifugo wasio na makazi pale, vile vile na kipindupindu. Na nyingine pale pia ni masuala ya elimu, kwa sababu ukiangalia mahali kama eneo kama ya Tana River, ambapo some of these cases of cholera that have been reported, and just having the schools reopen, this is a whole reality that these learners are going to be facing in case they actually open quite soon. So wait to see how the Minister of Education is really going to assess this whole situation until they ensure that the learners can actually resume. But speaking of learners, kwenye gazeti hili, masomo kidijitali yaendelea. taarifa sawia pale tu chini, taarifa sawia na lile la Daily Nation wasema shule za kibinafsi zaanza kutoa mafunzo kwa njia ya kidijitali, za umma zikisubiri tu. Mengi ni katika ukurasa wa 3. Kwenye spoti, kitanuka UEFA bayani kizuru Real, na baada ya mechi ya kwanza Ujerumani kuisha kwa sare, mshindi ataamuliwa kwa gozi la leo. Mwakuwa itakuwa ya kuchacha.
Sema kitanuka.
Kitanuka. Tuelekee pale juu, vitokezo ambavyo najua tutakuwa tunazungumzia kwenye State of the Nation leo. Wabunge wataka bilioni 66 shilingi za Kenya hizo. Wapendekeza mgao huo katika bajeti ya mwaka 2024 na 2025. Mengi katika ukurasa wa 4. Alfred, you'll be tackling on how this will be happening. And into Azimio atishia kuadhibu. Picha pale ya diwani alai kati ya wanasiasa waliohudhuria kikao cha naibu rais Rigathi Gachagua. Tuona hayo yatakuwa yanaendeleaje. Unit gazeti la Taifa Leo.
Onto the People Daily. Finally, white smoke of a doctor's strike. That's a big story there on the front page. And we have an image there of members of Council of Governors led by Nyeri Governor Mutahi Kahiga during a meeting with KMPD officials led by the Union Secretary General Davji Atela. Now they say after key talks with governors, Medics Union leader expresses hope that the two parties may today sign an agreement for depositing in court before deadline issued by Justice Ongaya lapses. More on that story on page 5 of the People Daily, and it is one of those stories that many people wish could actually come true, especially given the risk of a cholera outbreak that we are now facing. More highlights on the front page. Of course, petitioner steps up his battle on Linturi sacking. MP Wamboka reveals that he will write to donors, warning them to sanction CS if he refuses to resign. Wow. On the very top strip, agency raises alarm over refugee camp suicides. That's an interesting story. We've not seen it anywhere else. It's on the People Daily, page 12.
Yeah.
Yes. And finally, it is Mother's Day, but where are the flowers? That story is on page 3. And I don't know when Mother's Day is.
It is on Sunday.
Oh, coming Sunday?
Yes.
Oh, but
Sunday.
we don't have flowers. Probably because of the floods.
Probably.
Okay. It's good. It's a good reminder. I had no clue.
You had forgotten totally?
I had no clue. I hope my mom is not watching. I will always remember you, Mom.
Every weekend you have to go to Nakuru.
Oh, yes.
And that is the People Daily.
The People Daily.
Finally, to the Star, before we get to the cartoons. On the Star, tough questions for Linturi in ejection bid, and they ask why. For instance, did he direct Kell Chemicals to read a statement authored by the National Cereals and Produce Board? Matters Fake Fertilizer Committee to conduct a 3-day marathon hearing from today all the way to Friday. But then for the biggest conversation that reflects on a majority of the papers, the effects of this floods, say overwhelming. Schools assess damage after devastating floods. And they're just asking where to begin, yes. So trying to just see there. They have a picture of some damaged computer lab and a collapsed classroom wall at Mathare Primary School. Wow, that's the whole situation in that particular area. The highlights on the Star, the very top, that conversation on Elliot Kipchoge. My family feels threatened after Kevin Kiptum's death, according to World Marathon holder Elliot Kipchoge. Finally, on the bottom, Speaker Kingi holds debate on NADCO bills in the Senate. I haven't seen this conversation, the whole NADCO bills in other dailies. So a whole interesting bit. They ask, is it erroneous? And they ask, Matters Haiti, and the Star reignites this conversation. They say Kenya to deploy first batch of 200 cops to Haiti this month, even after the president resigned, and I think the finance minister,
the prime minister,
the prime minister took over, and I think the finance minister was, I think the VP or something like that. Back to Kenya, keyboard widow in court over eviction from their home. They're still just having a couple of stories not reflected on other dailies. That's a cue to get into the cartoons.
All right, and finally, the Standard has a cartoon. We realized there was a problem somewhere. There was no cartoonist for the Standard. They had resorted to putting photos.
Oh, yeah.
Now you can see, if you look at the cartoon on the Standard, it's a totally new cartoonist.
Harry.
This is Harry.
Yes.
This is a new cartoonist on the Standard. Page 12.
And it goes with something very different.
Yes, goes with what's happening in Russia with Vladimir Putin being sworn in for another term in office, for another 6-year term in office, which could take his tenure in power to over 30 years. Meanwhile, there's a gun, a smoking gun there, the NATO looking at Putin. That's a cartoonist, Harry, on the Standard. Let's take a look at the cartoon on the Daily Nation, page 19. It shows a dichotomy between what's happening when it comes to eviction of people living in riparian land. On one hand, those in Mathare, they are being forced to move. But in Runda,
very humbly,
they're being told, please, sawa.
Uko sawa? Sawa. Unaweza baki.
So the haves and the have-nots. That's on the cartoon on page 19 of the Daily Nation.
Oh, yes.
Do you have the one for People Daily?
I was trying to load it here, and let's take a vote to say nayo kama uko nayo, but then okay. All right, we'll be taking a look at it maybe during the whole course of the conversation, but that is all on the same State of the Nation coming up at 6:30.
Do stand by for that conversation, of which you can be part of course, through our social media on X or TV47 News and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. You're watching Morning Cafe. Time now for a break. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV47. My name is Freddy Ndimuli. Time now for us to take a look at the state of the nation. And in studio with me is Bwana Alex Mwathi. It's been a while. Sijakuona studio. Karibu sana.
Asante. Yeah. I've been well.
Yes.
And blessed of the Lord, even in the midst of the floods and all that are happening in this country. Mm-hmm. And let me take the opportunity to voice my condolences to those who may have lost their lives last night with the house that collapsed in Udheru. I don't know whether it has to do with the rains, but the previous day there was a lot of talk that the land, for the first time in Udheru and I think somewhere in Nakuru, these landslide and fishes appearing.
The land surface is a bit unstable.
It's unstable, yes. And there was explanation there is a lot of water underground soaking and loosening the soil and the substructure. So I wish them all the best and may God give them peace.
I'm looking at the media statement issued by the County Council of Nairobi, by the Chief Officer Disaster Management, Brian Simiyu. He says, and this is an update as at 11:50 p.m. last night, all residents of the collapsed building in Udheru have been accounted for. Fantastic. It says all 34 residents of the collapsed building in Nairobi's Mountain View ward have been located and are safe. There is no casualty.
Fantastic.
Earlier concerns about 4 missing residents, including a 10-year-old girl, have been cleared, and the building was sinking slowly, so all the residents were able to jump out and manage to exit the building.
Fantastic. I think that's very, very good news.
Yes,
that was a bit late. I think
yes, it's 10 minutes to midnight.
We are giving statements very late in the night.
Yes. But for this one, it is understandable.
But I'm so happy that that has happened because there was that issue of the 4 people that were missing.
Yes.
That's why I was saying that if...
Especially there was a lot of distress about that 10-year-old girl whose father said she had been left home alone.
Yes, exactly.
And at least now we can confirm, and this is official, that all the 34 residents of the collapsed building in Nairobi's Mountain View ward have been located and are safe.
Fantastic.
There is no casualty, and the earlier concerns about 4 missing residents, including that 10-year-old girl, have been cleared. This is a statement by the Chief Officer Disaster Management, Brian Simiyu, at the Nairobi City County Government. So yes, good news from that end. But meanwhile, the Nairobi City County says emergency teams continue to scour the scene while awaiting assistance from the KDF from Kahawa Barracks, who will bring sniffer dogs just to ensure and eliminate any possibility of individuals who may be trapped in the debris. Yes, so good news coming from that direction.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course, we'll come back to this issue of the flooding situation. It is what is featuring on the front pages of all our dailies, the aftermath now of the flooding situation, including the unstable land surfaces that may cause even bigger problems. But I want us to start with another issue that is really concerning, and it's on the front page of the Daily Nation, of the Standard this morning. Elliot Kog talking about the online abuse that he received from Kenyans, no less. This story also features, I think, on the front page of the Star newspaper. They've made reference of it on the front page as well. Now, a lot has been said about Kenyans online, Kenyans on Twitter, Kenyans on X, and just how, what word can I use?
Soldiers without boundaries.
Oh yes, and the kind of battles they've won, because they always win for Kenya, in online banter between Kenya and any other country.
Yes,
but then this is a situation where we see that Kenyans online turning against one of their own, and someone who has represented the country in bigger platforms and made Kenya proud. And watching that interview, because he was giving this interview to one of the international media, and just seeing breakdown from the pain that he has had to endure from that abuse. There's so much happening, especially online, Bwana Mwathi.
It was sad. It was very, very sad. And if you remember, I believe that during that time, I think the following day or 2 days after, we were in this studio, and we were asking Kenyans just to be courteous a bit. You're accusing somebody of organizing the killing of someone else through a road accident. It sounded quite far-fetched. All things are possible, but that was too far-fetched. There was no investigation, and yet everyone was talking to him, directly at him, on his responsibility for such an act. Extremely sad, extremely sad. And unfortunately, the keyboard warriors have no boundaries.
Simply from the
And when you
imagination.
sit on front of a keyboard, I think also you become like a member of parliament of Kenya. When they go into the house, your brain escapes. And you are left only with the emotions. And one wishes that when we go and post, because there are times you post something and you actually delete. You realize, oops, I don't have the details of that.
Exactly.
So you delete it. Because then you have to keep thought to what you are doing or what you are posting. But we don't seem to care, man.
Even
we don't
now,
seem to care.
Shockingly enough, looking at X, some of the posts after this interview, people are still accusing him and telling him he was wrong either way. And you wonder, what exactly?
What are you talking about? You're not an investigator. One of the reasons, the only reason why he was supposedly the murderer of Kiptum was because they were going to compete in a marathon. That's extremely far-fetched.
And initially, when Kiptum won a race, Kipchoge took time before
congratulating him. And this happens in sportsmanship. You feel
it is a competition.
And then later you realize, oh, I haven't congratulated the winner. It's not normal. It's not always that people congratulate. But I think for me, the bigger issue, Fred, in this whole saga, is that we can't do much because a society have created a sense in which they look at things. But it's just to continue talking to them. People, when they go to X, when they go to Facebook, when they go to any update, it is okay when you talk about anything else. But when you're talking about an individual, you must remember you're not talking about, if you talk about Alex Mwathi, you're not talking about me. You're talking about me, you're talking about my children, you're talking about my mother, my father, my relatives, everybody around. And one of the most hurtful thing is in this interview, Kipchoge, when he called his mother after this saga, and the mother told him that, be careful, my son.
Because what people are saying about you.
Meaning that she may have herself encountered situation, because we are Africans, so we are connected.
Yes.
So if your son is a murderer, sometimes you get accused of having raised a murderer. So if you sit down with that old lady, she may tell you that there are people who actually threatened her. That if your son can do this, what about you?
But my concern now is the kind of interactions we have online as Kenyans. We've become very combatant, very militant online. If you look, even last week, there was Kenya versus Tanzania. We've done Kenya versus Uganda. And everyone appears to admit that, hey, don't
touch Kenyans.
Don't try to rattle Kenyans online, which fine, yeah, we're happy about it. We're happy about it. Even CNN, another big media, are scared of Kenyans. But it borders on bullying as well. Are we not creating a monster? Because now you're seeing this kind of reaction, even coming back to affect our very own.
We creating a monster. And I think most Africans saying that most African communities have a saying that if you feed an ogre, a giant ogre, it comes back to eat your children. And I think it's Orengo who mentioned it from a political point of view, that sometimes the ogre eats its own children. Yes. And this is exactly what has happened, Fred, that we become combatant, we become unreasonable, we become nonsensical, we become childish in the way we attack everybody else. We don't care about details, we don't care about facts, we don't care about anything else. We can accuse Fred Nwil on anything on this earth. And if you don't respond with the same measure, then it's assumed that you're guilty of the thing that I'm accusing you. Because we've seen a few artists, they get bullied.
Yes.
They respond. Either by singing. 2 weeks ago, there's one of these Kikuyu singers who's been bullied a bit, quite a bit. He went and produced a song to hit back at them. So when he hits back, they all tone down.
But not everyone
and I think what you're saying is true, that you have created something that may not be good for us going forward. Because when you start attacking your own, some people will take it literally. You know, when you accuse this man of killing somebody else's, then you see the funeral is conducted by the state, including building a new house and all that, then some people may say, oh boy, the state is supporting him. Meaning what? We have nobody else other than taking the law into our own hands to revenge, which is a sad thing.
At the day and time when issues around mental health are key, the stability of people's mental health, even online. Because now, okay, fine, this probably was extreme, but it happens at different levels, even in schools, even in interactions at work, even in interactions by artists, and you've mentioned artists. The fact that this kind of attack on an individual, a collective attack by people who know very little about you, could harm a lot of people. And there are concerns around the mental health of those people who interact with Kenyans online.
Yes, there could be that issue, but I think this is more of I'm not an expert in this field, but I think this is more of being addicted. You know, it's you go take 2 bottles of alcohol, and sooner or later you become a drunkard, you know, and an alcoholic. So people have become so excited about it that they are addicted to it. And
they're always looking for a new target.
If you go to a meeting, you know, in the past, people would fidgety if somebody was late for the meeting. Do you know people now no bother, no longer?
No one complains.
No one complains. Why? Because you'll have a hall of 100 people waiting for someone, and everybody's on his phone, and everybody's on social media. So we are eating. And they say that as much as garbage you allow in your brain, the same amount of garbage you're able to spew.
Okay.
And that's the key.
Well, that's a headline on highlighted on the front page of the Standard. The main story is on page 4. Kipchoge says, the trolling scared me and I lost friends.
Yes.
Even people who are his friends. They took this...
I'm a student of Stoicism, and one of the things that the philosophy teaches us is that out of all the people, friends that you have, there's only a small percentage that are there because they care about you. The majority are your friends because of what they can scrape out of you.
Okay. And when the attacks begin...
When the attacks begin, that's when you realize, oh, I thought I had 1 million friends. Kumbe there are only 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's the story there. And the other one, the highlight, other international highlight, because I know we are going to miss this. This story is on page 27. What's happening in Russia. Vladimir Putin in power as president or prime minister since 1999. That's 25 years ago.
Yes.
He's now been sworn in for another 6-year term, which could take his term to about over 30 years, 31 years actually.
Thank you.
This, in terms of the governance of this international matters, this is definitely something significant.
Russia has never accepted your usual democratic systems. Remember, they were under the communists for about 60 years before they came up with a pseudo-democratic system. But it's not a democratic system. They don't care about anything. They will never question you for anything. Just like China. You know, China also have some different kind of democracy that's not the one that we know, where it's you being voted every 4 or 5 years. It's people sitting together. Of course, China is a better system because you grow to become a leader from the provinces, depending on your based on meritocracy. But for Russia, it's never been that. You remember when there was those term limits, Putin became after finishing his term, he became prime minister. When he became prime minister, they changed the law. So after that, he became president. So really, it's a dictatorship, and it's unfortunate that dictatorship only is seen in a bad light in Africa.
But look at it this way, because and it's interesting when you talk about Africa, because there's always a balance between our dalliance with the West and now the East, and you can see more and more China and Russia making inroads in Africa. The two nations that you've mentioned that do not necessarily subscribe to the democracy that we're used to from the West. What does that mean for Africa as a continent when we're now working with Putin, who's looking at 30 years in power? What are you telling African leaders?
He can't, and he's never told, they have never told Africa anything to do with leadership. China is a darling because they never question anybody. You want a railway line from Naivasha to Malaba? We will do it for you. How much? 720 billion, by the way. It's going to cost us 3 billion shillings a kilometer. Feel like crying the last couple of days. So they will give you the money, as long as you tell us how you're going to pay it.
It's a future of democracy as we know it that I'm more concerned about. Now that these are the people we're working with, we are looking more and more towards Russia. You see even our leaders looking more and more towards the kind of political party system that has worked in China with the communism system. And what does it say about the future of democracy as we know it?
Democracy, as we know it, is on the deathbed. Because the biggest nation in this world that has democracy is supposedly the United States of America. But if you look at the leaders that have been able to elect the last couple of years, it questions the ability of that system to be sustainable. We had a Trump, as he was. Then after him, we had a young man, a young man called Biden. So really, out of 250 million Americans, the best leader you can get is a 77-year-old who falls on the staircase. Out of 250 million people, your democracy has reduced the fight between this old man, and Mr. Trump, who has cases in court every single day. In the past, when you are mentioned in one case, you resign. In fact, I think in the when Obama was elected, I think at the time, there's a fella who was doing very well. Then they unearthed a 20-year-old situation where he molested a woman. And
that was the end of this campaign. Yes.
This fella has actually even paid prostitutes to do things for him. So hence, democracy as it is, it's not going to last for too long.
Do you think even in our context as Africans, we need to re-look at that system that we've been looking up to, this democracy? 100%.
And I've said before that the unfortunate thing in this country is that over the last couple of years, there was either thought through or the things that evolve where a cartel of people have formed a political cartel that rules this country. So that it's either this guy or this guy, but they belong together, though they pretend to be different. You've seen in 2002, and this started actually 2002 when Moi appointed for us about 20 leaders that have been leading us since then. On the 18th of March, Kasarani Kisirani, he appointed them as leaders of KANU. Then 3 months after the split, it's like they were told, you go, and then split after some time. Go ye and rule this country and benefit yourselves and forget about these monkeys. Oh, by the way, there's a clip that is showing when politicians take a photograph of Kenyans, what do they see on the other side? They see school children.
Wow. Why?
Because they don't care about us. All of them, they don't care about us. So what has happened, a group of people have formed a cartel. It's Ruto, it's Uhuru, it's Raila Odinga, it's Musalia Mudavadi, it's Kalonzo Musyoka.
The same faces.
And they're sycophants. 5 people and the sycophants are the ones that rule this country. Either way, whether it's Azmio.
They're just taking turns.
They're just taking turns in ruling this country. But all of them benefit from it. To an extent, when the check delayed last week, you saw someone going back to the streets to shout. Well, I'm sure the check has come through now, so he has nothing to complain about. And what's the future? The future is to be able to break that. The future is to be able to break that.
Because you said that probably, you said when you started that probably dictatorship is not such a bad thing.
We have, yesterday there was a clip of this guy who have overthrown a country, I think it's Benin. He told IMF went to him and threw them off. Because the taxes we are being taxed today are because of our dalliance with the IMF and World Bank. And for them, they have their own agendas, not us.
Okay.
So benevolent dictatorship is good, but how do you identify someone as a benevolent dictator?
All right.
That's a big question.
Vladimir Putin sworn in for a new 6-year term on Tuesday at the Kremlin ceremony that was boycotted by the US and other Western countries, at which he said he is open to nuclear talks. Yes, this 6-year term will actually take him to 31 years in power. He's been in power since 1999. And yes, you can see now how Russia and China are now interacting with most African countries. Yeah. Okay. And so that could be indicative of the direction we will be taking. Time now for a break. When we come back, we discuss the main headline, and that's the aftermath of the flooding situation, including the cholera outbreak and a food crisis that is now looming. You're watching Morning Cafe. Welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Fred Indimuli. We continue with the State of the Nation with political analyst Alex Mwathi, and now joining us, Susan Wanjiku, also a political analyst. Karibu sana. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, just before the break, we were looking at a number of interesting headlines, including what Kipchoge Keino said about online abuse, as well as what's happening in Russia with Vladimir Putin being sworn in for another 6-year term, which could take his tenure in power to over 30 years. Now, I want us to focus on what is on the front pages of our main dailies. That's the Daily Nation and the Standard, and this is the aftermath of the flooding situation. Now that it would appear that the rains have subsided relatively, the level of water, in as far as flooding is concerned, has gone relatively down. The country is now staring at the aftermath of this situation. On the Standard, they talk about a food crisis, a looming food crisis, food shortage fears after floods sweep through the nation's agricultural heartlands, destroying food reserves, thousands of acres of crops, and damaging irrigation systems, exposing Kenyans to high prices and steep losses. And this story has been extensively covered on pages 2 and 3 of the Standard under the title Deluge of Death. They look at some of the families that have been displaced from their homes, but even more concerning, the acres and acres, thousands of acres of agricultural land that has been destroyed. On the front page of the Daily Nation, they look at floods plague. Yes, the destruction of sanitation facilities and contamination of water sources. Now we are staring at a cholera outbreak, with the state confirming that 34 cases have already been reported in Tana River County. That's already an outbreak, 34 cases. Susan, let's start from there. We always talk about preparedness. We always talk about preparedness in as far as some of these weather patterns are concerned, flooding situation and all this. But the problems you're now looking at appear to be even more, to be bigger than the flooding or the rains that we've experienced in the past few days.
Yeah, thank you, Fred. Yeah, of course, whatever we're experiencing right now as a country has caught many of us as a surprise, or I would say we were never prepared, and this has always been the case. I would remember last year, November, the weatherman had warned us about the rains, and we went ahead mocking it. We were saying El Jua, whatever, but now we are having a reality that these rains were coming. And also I would say we've been talking for years about climate change, and this is it now. We are seeing it firsthand, we're experiencing it firsthand, and whatever is coming out well is that we are not prepared at all. We are talking about now the rains have come, they will pass, again we'll have drought. How prepared are we? We are telling people to move to higher grounds. Is the higher grounds also safe? Do we have land there to safeguard our people? So this is something that I don't know how we are going to do it, but it's a mountain before us.
Okay. Yeah. One of the dailies has made mention of the fact that probably there could be a light at the end of the tunnel in as far as the doctor strike is concerned, but it's still yet to be done. We're talking about a cholera outbreak, 34 cases already reported. Anyone who has seen or experienced a case of cholera, a single case, you know how severe this can be, without the medics back in hospital, and it's not just the doctors, the clinicians, the nurses are already threatening. They've given a 7-day strike notice. If we look at preparedness, there's no preparedness for an outbreak with medics out of the hospital.
Yeah, we are caught up in a difficult situation. I would call it a hard place in a rock. That the flooding has come at a time when the doctors are also off. And any diseases that come out of it then becomes a little bit more challenging to handle. I'm happy a little bit because most of the hospitals in our rural areas are handled by clinicians, by clinical officers who are not on strike.
Clinicians were on strike.
And the nurses.
Have gone back. It's the nurses who are still there.
In the villages, they have a sense of a little sense of duty. In town, they will jump all over the place, but in the villages, they have a slight sense of duty. Not to say that a strike is a good thing to happen, but we hope that the report this morning that there is a light at the end of the tunnel that will work towards them getting back to work as fast as they can. But like she says, we've known this. And one of the most unfortunate things is how we react to things. I saw some people congratulating two of the so-called mighty prophets and apostles of this town for having prophesied about this rain and its effect and the flooding a year ago. And I thought, where do you live? Because 5 years ago, if we went to read the weatherman reports, we'd have known between last year and this year, there would be deluge and there would be flooding. It's a scientific thing. It's nothing to be prophesied. It's not a word from God. You go back, you read 4 or 5 years ahead, you'll know that after these rains, there will be a period of drought. Hence, what they are saying that there will be food crisis, because you have two situations. One, because of the amount of rain that has come through, the farms that farm tomatoes, vegetables, and all that have been destroyed. So there'll be shortage of cabbages, potatoes, because of the deluge. Then after that, unfortunately, there'll be a period of drought. And this has happened since the days of Joseph. You remember Joseph in the Bible, 7 years of 7 years of good harvest and 7 years of this cycle have been there. There's nothing to prophesy about. You just go read scientific books. But the bottom line is, yes, one of the things that it's difficult to prepare yourself for this kind of situation, even when you know it's coming. You've seen this happen in the US, the cyclone Catalina. Destruction of the highest order. The issue is, how do you react? And how you react is not going around with a helicopter and watching what is happening on the ground. It's really going down to the ground and finding out what's happening. It's sitting back, and I'm happy. I think last week the cabinet sat down and they discussed just before the president gave his statement, and they came up. But we haven't seen any plan of action towards the situation that's happened. Because when you tell people move to the higher grounds.
Did you expect much more from the president's address, probably a declaration of a national disaster?
Of course, that ought to have been the only thing he talked about
he
as a national disaster.
Yes.
He didn't.
Because we've seen, even on the front page of the Daily Nation, we have King Charles III empathizing with Kenyans.
Exactly.
If at all we could channel all this goodwill from the Pope, the King, and other like-minded individuals who are empathizing with Kenyans through a declaration of a national disaster, we would be able to pull that kind of resource and the resources we need for better preparation. The government, through the president's statement, just said we have set aside 1 billion shillings. According to the Kenya Red Cross, we need not less than 7 billion shillings for this. Do you feel like the government probably is out of touch, or this administration is a bit out of touch with what's really happening?
Okay, Fred, if we go back, we see every now and then we also have departments in our counties and everywhere. Like I saw when Sakaja, yesterday, he was being questioned. The counties have come up with a docket or department called disaster management. So every year I tend to think that we set aside some funds for the same. We have trainings, people every day coming up and going for trainings to know more about how do we handle disasters. Disaster including waters, including fire, including everything. But when it comes to the actual thing, we still find nothing is happening. So I would say we've failed as a country to address the issues. We held the other day we had the African Summit for climate change. We spoke big. We showed how prepared we are to change our ways of living and everything. But still, nothing is happening. Also the president, you see, where the president sits, he might tend to show Kenyans that we are able to do this. Hatujafika pale kwa.
Sio lazima tuombe.
Na sio lazima, not a must we put it as a national calamity. We can handle it.
But the president has been on record downplaying this weather situation since
100%.
last year.
100%. When we had
I wonder, is he doing the same this time round?
He is, because remember when we had, when we had a very bad situation, he was launching this so-called affordable housing that's not affordable housing project in Naivasha. And he was talking about in an SEZ. It behoves of a leader that when the country is in trouble, you pack some of these things that are not immediate, and you look at the emergency of the situation. You ask a question: don't they have touch with the actual ground? I think they don't. Actually, it reminds one of the French Revolution, where when people started clamoring for food, the queen was asking, why are they crying? And said, because they're hungry. She said, why don't they buy bread? Because she had no idea that there was no bread to be bought. If people from Muranga can go to check their constituents, and this happened last week, in a helicopter, Muranga is hardly 70 kilometers from here. You go on a helicopter and you go around your constituent to see the effect of the landslides and all that. It means you've lost complete touch with reality. In this situation where our country is struggling with flooding, over 200 people already are dead. Over 200 people are dead. You still, the only thing that you can do is present bills in Parliament to increase the taxes on the people who are dying. I agree with you, 100% they have lost touch with reality on the ground.
All right.
And it's unfortunate, very unfortunate.
Well, the Daily Nation talks about the floods plague, focusing mostly on health matters. A cholera outbreak where the state has already confirmed 34 cases in Tana River. This is a threat of an epidemic.
Sorry, Fred. And anybody who's been to Tana River will tell you that that's very dangerous. For the simple reason that when Tana River floods, there's some areas where it goes even 4 or 5 kilometers into what we call land. Meaning that everyone in that area houses are swept, and they have to move on to what you call the camps that the government might create. Of course, the county government, I heard her mention about disaster management. You must remember that is a requirement by law that every county puts aside 2% of their total revenue on disaster management. An estimation is that Nairobi has about 900 million shillings every year for disaster management. So the boats that Sakaja wanted to buy, he would have bought them. They would have helped us.
People are seeing the
need for those boats. So in Tana River, when that happens, those of us who have been there actually worry about that because the effect could be sweeping. Because people use the water in the same river. That river, when it goes that wide, it means that it collects all the septic latrines.
Destroyed here.
Yeah, so downstream towards Malindi, where people also use the water from that river, can be really a disaster. But let's pray that God will protect us.
Yes.
Yeah.
34 cases confirmed of cholera. On the Standard, they talk about the food crisis, the destruction of agricultural land, agrarian land, destruction of crops that are already planted. The acreage, for example, under rice in Moya, 2,000 acres submerged in water. I know the system uses flooding as well, but this one is destruction. Livestock in Perkera, maize seed crop contracted by Kenya Seed has been destroyed. And that's a kind of situation that we're looking at. But we do hope for better days ahead. Let's now come back to focus on the other story that has been a big talking point and also features on the front page. And this is the impeachment or the motion to impeach CS for Agriculture, Mithika Linturi. It's there on the front page of the Daily Nation as a highlight. As Linturi trial starts, MP fears for his life, and NCPB boss fails to stop his arrest over fake fertilizer. The real story is on page 12 of the Daily Nation. MP says my life is in danger. But showdown is looming in Parliament today as the impeachment trial of embattled Agriculture CS Mithika Linturi begins. And already the person behind this motion, that's Bumula MP Jack Wamboka, says his life is in danger. He's the one who sponsors this motion. The 10-member committee has already begun its sittings. And one wonders, there's been calls for the resignation, for the firing of CSs, and now there was a lot of applause last week when Parliament passed that motion. But given the kind of history we've had Many people are skeptical and saying, could this just be another case of window dressing? Do you believe that this process will actually be consequential?
No, it will
consequential
not.
in terms of actually getting a CS out of office?
No, I don't think it will happen because also the government wants to show or to be part of our guys is innocent, because we've been having conversations that it is not his fault. Mm-hmm. It was the previous government who did whatever they did for farmers to receive fake fertilizer. But in most Kenyans, we lack that sense of accountability and responsibility that at the moment I'm the one who is there. Mm-hmm. What did I do to protect the farmer? But being that where the farmers were getting the fertilizer from, it's a government institution, so we expected everything that was coming in should be inspected. For that factor alone, this guy should be going home. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But
Bonamwadi, you've seen that, and you've seen the kind of, let me call it arrogance that comes from people occupying such positions. It's not anything new. I remember the famous phrase, "I'd rather die than resign." And this is like almost two decades ago. This is a kind of thing we're used to, that once you're a cabinet minister or you're a CS, it's only the president who fires you. You can either resign and no one else can kick you out of office. Do you feel that this process is just another situation to sanitize Bwana Linturi?
Currently, I'm reading a book called Ego is the Enemy. Ego is the enemy. And it's very interesting because I'm tempted to buy very many copies of those books and give every CS in this republic, because I think their egos are blotted to an extent where there is nobody who is denying that stones were sold as fertilizer. No one is denying that. No one is denying that.
Initially, he denied.
I'm talking about today. I'll come to that. No one is denying that farmers found those stones. Mm-hmm. No one is denying that there is a specific company or specific companies, or I think they keep mentioning Kel Chemicals in Thika, supplied that. No one is denying. Meaning, a crime was committed. A crime was committed. Not committed against an individual, but committed against the Kenyan farmer. Mm-hmm. So you go to cereal board, they are there. To an extent that the cereal board have decided that they are going to compensate the farmers who receive the stones. If a lawyer tells you that the evidence is clear on the table, what are we discussing? Mm-hmm. What is Parliament discussing? Last week, I was on another station and I was asking, what are they discussing? What are they asking him? They can't walk to the national cereal boards in Eldoret and I think in Migori, wherever else that we saw stones coming out. They go there and get the evidence. It behoves on the guy, if he was not egoistic, narcissist, to resign from the position of CS. For Parliament to waste our time and our money to discuss is really an abuse of office. Mm-hmm. 10 members of Parliament sitting in those committees making around 20,000 shillings every single day of our money. Meaning by the end of this shenanigan, we'll have spent 200-300 million shillings. Mm-hmm. And what will happen? We'll have cleaned this guy. Because these fellas have an instruction to clean him up.
Despite the fact that
the evidence is there that these things happened.
And despite the fact that a majority of members in the House passed the motion.
Mm-hmm. This, at the end of the day, will stop that conversation. Because then, if the process have gone through, what else can you say? Mm-hmm. Now, remember, the government today should be concentrating on one thing and on one thing. Compensation of the farmers who obtained that fertilizer. Mm-hmm. Compensation of the farmers for the produce that they have lost. Because not only the farmer that have lost, this country have lost. Because if you put stones instead of fertilizer, meaning that that crop will not perform. So the government should be now evaluating how much money should we be compensating the farmers for the loss of production. What are we doing now?
Looking at food shortage.
We are wasting our time. If stones were sold, what are we discussing in Parliament?
If this parliamentary process does
I
not
would
result...
love to ask Wetangula and the rest of the characters who keep pretending to be focused on Kenyan welfare.
Let's be fair to parliamentarians. That's the only process they have. According to the law, that is the only provision they have to actually pursue such a CS. But the question is on the consequentiality of this process. If at all this process does not result in the exit of the CS, then any other exercise by the National Assembly towards such would be an exercise in futility, devoid of public goodwill.
Yeah, that is what is going to happen. But it's not a surprise to us, Fred. We've seen it happening. He's not the first CS to be found. We had also, in the previous government, we had the containers that were bought as clinics, mobile clinics, right? Where are they right now? Where is the CS? So I feel as a country we lack a sense of responsibility. That myself, I've been tasked to do a certain job, and when mistakes happen, I don't carry the responsibility to answer to Kenyans or to own up to mistakes. It might not even that you're the one who has done it, but also the procurement process or those people, because I believe the ministry has a lot of people working there, and we could have junior officers doing a few malicious things here and there, but just owning up and saying, yes, this happened, I'm the one who is responsible, I went to that office, I sold to protect and to be that person who will be answerable for the same, but I don't come out and say, yeah, this happened when I was there, I should...
And Boramoti, I'm very concerned about the fact that we appear to have a lack of trust, general lack of trust in the institutions or systems put in place to ensure accountability from public officers. When, at least with the new constitution, the Constitution 2010, it was meant to remedy that systems were in place in case of errors of commission or omission, even if the boss decides he will not fire you, the systems will ensure that they get rid of you. But you're saying that it would appear this time around those systems are not going to work.
Those of us who were there when we started this clamor for change of constitution, we were of the opinion at that time, and we made our voices heard, that we didn't need a constitutional change. We needed a mind change. And the reason we needed a mind change because we are doing a new constitution to ensure that Moi gets out and to ensure that no one will come back with the same power as Moi. But we didn't change our culture, we didn't change our thinking, we didn't change what we are building up, because every small thing that you do builds up to something bigger. To an extent now that we have about 4 or 5 institutions that supposedly fight corruption. But as Kenyans, do we bother with them? We don't. The reason being, over the years, they have shown that because it's us Kenyans, you're not some special people, it's because it's us Kenyans who run them. We run them our way. And our way is that when you have a king, we never tell him he's naked. And the king protects his own because he has sycophants who really put him up there, so he has to keep protecting them. So the institutions don't do anything. And that's why you find the Auditor General keeps every year churning out reports that show that so much money was stolen, so much money was have been not been accounted for. Actually, for auditor, he doesn't say stolen. He talks about money that's not been accounted for. Now, it's not 200,000 shillings. It's billions of shillings. But have you ever heard anybody coming back to tell you, yeah, we accounted for that? No one comes back. So over time, the institution that be, the arrests that have happened, the people that have done things that are mind-boggling, it comes out in one day. Last week, the auditor was reporting that 144 million shillings of the money allocated to food in Nairobi County was not used for county. But that dies. So why would Kenyans have a faith in systems that don't follow anybody? And those systems themselves are our systems. The people who work there is us.
Ni sisi.
Ni sisi. Kwa hivyo kama sisi hatuna uadilifu, how can we expect anybody else to have an integrity? So that even those institutions lack integrity themselves. I don't know that you saw, I don't know, the head of ESC was being questioned on a corrupt situation.
And it would appear that there's general consensus that even the applause given to Parliament last week was all for nothing, that this process will end up sanitized. But let's be fair to the Houses of Parliament, and especially the National Assembly. The 10-member committee has just begun its work.
I hear you saying that.
Yes.
I hear you saying that. But, Fred, I would like to address them. There's something called common sense. The law may say whatever it says, but there is common sense. If you have the stones and they're in the SCPB boat, they're there. It's not a story. What are you investigating?
All right.
Common sense tells you, don't investigate.
Okay. Let's take a break right now. Of course, the 10-member committee has begun its probe and will be reporting to Parliament next week on Tuesday. The report has to be in Parliament because that's the lapse of the 10-day period that they have. Well, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll discuss some politics from the Mount Kenya region. I can see some very interesting discussions here. You're watching Morning Cafe. The final leg of the Morning Cafe State of the Nation discussion here. My name is Fred Indimuli and I'm still in studio with Alex Mwathi and Susan Wanjiko. Let's now focus on some Mount Kenya politics. Two headlines on page 6 of the Standard. One saying Gachagua reaches out to Azimio's Karua and Kioni, and the other one, CS Kuria, says, I'm now fed up with stupidity of some Mount Kenya leaders. Let's start with the most interesting one by CS Kuria. He always makes some very interesting statements. Now, the supremacy battle in Mount Kenya region continues after the Cabinet Minister for Public Service, Moses Kuria, presented himself as the alternative between Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and Kiharu MP Ndindi Nyoro. Kuria has also condemned an incident in Murang'a where Nyoro, together with 3 elected leaders, hijacked, and that hijacked is put in quotes, an event organized by the Deputy President accusing the legislators of engaging in showbiz when people are mourning the loss of loved ones through a landslide. And quote, he said, in Murang'a, they were competing on who would arrive first and later fly using a chopper. And that is a high level of stupidity. I will not die twice. I am fed up with this stupidity. as Moses Kuria. And you know, Moses Kuria has a way of coming out and letting a bit of some of the simmering discomfort within Mount Kenya. Then he calms down and says everything is okay. Then he gets rattled. Again, I say something. It would appear that things are not as rosy as many people would want us to believe in within Mount Kenya UDA leadership.
Yeah, Moses Kuria had so many ways to survive in politics and putting himself in a place where you can't ignore him. So I think even right now, what I believe is happening in Mount Kenya still is the who is the kingpin, who is going to take over the leadership of the larger Mount Kenya community. And I think that is what is still going on, and Moses Kuria is one of them. We have Ndindi Nyoro, we've seen him coming out also very strongly, and also Gachagua. But you tend to now think and ask yourself, what is the process of becoming the kingpin or controlling a certain region as their leader? So it's a process we are yet to see how it is going to end. But I think Gachagua has an upper hand. Yeah.
Okay. What's your assessment of this, these sentiments by Kuria?
I think the political writers have put a nice piece on him, and even the fact that he's been apologizing to Uhuru Kenyatta. We saw him invite the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, and he took a goat to him. You know, it's a sign of, if we disparaged you during the campaign, here is something to pacify you. And the point is very simple, and I think she said it, that Mount Kenya doesn't have a kingpin. And the politics of Kenya are fully dependent on a community having a kingpin. I think they haven't studied, again, like we said earlier, they don't study the reality, that things have really shifted. And I think going forward in the future, maybe kingpins will not be necessary, because if you look at even the other communities, their kingpins now are old. And there's no younger people who are coming up that there will be a replacement for them whatsoever. So I think this kingpin thing will die very soon. But the clamor now is, who will be the kingpin for Mount Kenya? Remember, Gachagua was picked out of the number of people who are vying to become deputy president to William Ruto during the campaign. He wasn't a leader of the Central Kenya people. He was picked as one of the Central Kenya people. Remember, the alternative was the Professor Kindiki, the CS for internal security, interior. And you've seen him perform very well at passport thing. I'm laughing because I'm hoping that this time he has solved it. Remember, he resolved it last year. and immediately it went back to where I'm hoping that this time it's solved for forever. So hence, there is a vacuum.
Okay.
And people are struggling to fill up that vacuum.
Okay.
We have Gachagua now on one hand, who was hoisted there by the fact that he became the deputy president. He was hoisted and he took over and felt that now I'm the kingpin for Mount Kenya. But they're telling him, no, you haven't earned that leadership. Okay.
Hence the relevance of the next headline, still on the same page 6 of the Standard, where they make reference to the Limuru 3 meeting, which is scheduled for May 17th, actually, in about 10 days from now. Yes, less than 10 days, actually. And this reads that Gachagua reaches out to Azimio's Karua and Kioni. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has extended an olive branch to NARC Kenya leader Martha Karua and Jubilee Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni. Gachagua invited the Mount Kenya Azimio leaders who are planning for Limuru 3 meeting on May 17th to table their wishes. Basically, he's rubbishing the idea of the Limuru 3. But now the relevance of this Limuru 3 is what Limuru 1 and Limuru 2 did. The naming of the meeting was based on 2 others that have been held in Limuru, and major political announcements by the country's founding father, President Jomo Kenyatta, and former President Uhuru Kenyatta in 1966 and in March of 2012. So During his meeting, Mr. Kenyatta came up with a far-reaching political decisions that included reducing the influence of radicals within KANU, whom Jaramogi Odinga led. Now, the Limuru II in 2012 brought together leaders from the Gikuyu Embu Meru who handed Uhuru the mantle of leadership to succeed President Mwai Kibaki. Now, that's the relevance. It is happening in less than 7 days. Yes, about 9 days from now. Should we expect an attempt to name a kingpin for the community then? Hence the reluctance by individuals like Bwana Gachagua to be part of that.
Okay, Fred, I don't think the Gachagua is reluctant, because he also extended an olive branch to Akina Kioni and Mother and told them, if you have any issues, just come see me. So Gachagua is putting it as it's automatic that I'm the guy. Come talk to me the issues you're having. But also now, they are setting a place where we don't have a leader. So this is the time we are coming together to look for a leader who is going to take us forward in political spaces. But now you look at the way we are talking of young people coming out and fighting for what they have been looking forward to for the longest time. We can't ignore Dende Nyoro. We can't ignore people like Moses Kuria, because you tend to see a lot of young people following them and getting to know what do you have in store for us. So I don't think it will have a lot of impact, considering that even the people who are calling out for these meetings, there are people who've been in leadership. There are people they've been given a chance to give us what they have in store for us, but yet nothing.
But looking at this, it would appear that even the Deputy President has some misgivings about having this meeting take place at this time. He's not part of it. If at all they go ahead with the meeting and name someone else, whether consequentially or not, as kingpin, that creates another power.
If you look at what you've read in terms of Limuru 1, in terms of Limuru 2, these were meetings that were called by how do I call it? The invisible Kikuyu leaders, the people who hold sway in terms of leadership in the central, in the Gema community. And at that time, they had a kingpin that needed to be announced. Jomo Kenyatta was not necessarily being appointed then. He was already accepted as a kingpin for the Gikuyu Embu Meru Gema community. But really, what that meeting does is to tell everyone else, yeah, we recognize him as our leader. Do whatever you have to do, but talk to him first if you want to talk to us. When we come to the 2012, after the violence that happened in 2008, Uhuru Kenyatta, and especially after being taken to ICC, he came out as the man who defended his community. While everybody was saying, oh, you are this, you are that. But he came out as a leader. So by the time you're calling the 2012, he already had started a stride in this country. And if you remember, people like Mishuki had actually announced him in Muranga as a leader of the Kikuyus. This is a young man that is going to lead us from now onwards. And Michuki were influential people. So when they went to Limuru 2, it was really to announce to the country that, yes, we have sat down and we have accepted now, that is our kingpin. Today you are calling Limuru 2, and there is nothing like that. Limuru 3, and there is nothing like that. That is the insignificance of that meeting. If you remember very well, Kina Kioni tried to do a Limuru 3 2 years ago, in 2022, when they wanted to I don't know who they wanted now to announce them, because President Uhuru Kenyatta was still there and was already stepping out. But maybe they wanted him to come and re-emphasize that he's still the kingpin, even after the election. Maybe that's what they wanted. It's scuttled out. This same thing will happen to this meeting, because it's got to be, someone says is ethnic bigotry, but when you look at the country is divided into ethnic groups.
That's the nature of our politics.
And that's the nature of politics. So you can't just dismiss it like that. So they need to be people who are leaders in their own strength, calling for this meeting with initially identifying someone who can be announced the leader. So now, when Kioni and Martha do that, they are hoping that one of them would be announced as a leader of the community. It's a laughing matter.
Do you think that probably the deputy president would benefit from such a forum if at all he was to be endorsed and announced as leader?
The issue with him is that as a leader, you're the one who is supposed to organize for that meeting. Even if not directly. Like Uhuru Kenyatta will not say, I'm the one who organized for Rimuru too. But you know he was part of that top echelon of the people that I said are invisible who are organizing that. So for deputy to go to a meeting organized by Kioni and Martha is coming down, stepping down. That's what he's avoiding.
So maybe even if this doesn't happen this time, it will happen at some point, probably later, once there's an agreement of who should be the de facto leader.
Yes, definitely. So that has to happen at some stage where a leader is announced. But this of 17th, Deputy President is telling them, look, I'm not stepping down. I'm actually up here, and you guys are clamoring here. Why don't you come to me with the issues you have? He's asking them, come, let's discuss this Rimuru 3 you're talking about, so that they can be able to organize for it in a way that it ends up announcing a kingpin for the community.
Okay. And closely linked to this conversation is the grassroots elections for political parties. We've seen the UDA trying to carry out this process to some level of success here and there. And who becomes what where within the UDA party is a big conversation in as far as political parties are concerned. I know in Kenya, we always think about political parties simply as vehicles to an election. But this time around, it looks a bit different, with the president insisting that this party should grow into something bigger, probably including merging smaller parties into this. The control of the UDA especially, and the shareholding discussion is also key in this. Mount Kenya want to have their stake in this party. That discussion should be held around this time as well, when they're carrying out the grassroots elections. Yes. It means that even involvement in such discussions about the next kingpin are very relevant at this time. Do you agree that it is not too early to have this conversation about who's going to be the kingpin?
Of course, it's not too early. Even those who are vying for positions already are on the ground, moving around. This is the time to show your strength as a leader. So, yeah, we had issues during the elections, and we had MP like Gakuyo coming out and saying whatever. They are feeling left out as a community in the party here in Nairobi. So I agree that it's something lazima you put your eyes out there and see what is there for us as a community. And
even the deputy president has really put his foot down when it comes to the running of this party. He's managed to have that amendment to the party constitution, which had called for 3 deputy party leaders. Now, that has since been amended last week, and there's only 1 deputy party leader and probably 2 assistant deputy party leaders. That says a lot about his position. He may have just been picked as a deputy president, but he's also grown in status in as far as politics is concerned.
100%, because when you're a politician, when you are appointed, you create your space, because that's what life is all about. Because life is a fight for territory. And if you don't fight for your territory, someone will snatch it from you.
He's done it well?
He's done it well. I think during the break we had mentioned that he was very combative at the beginning of this government's beginning, and very, very combative. But as soon as they tamed the lion with the AU chairmanship and all that, now he's toned down his combativeness, if you have noticed, meaning he's a leader who is trying to cut a niche for himself in the leadership from the region where he comes from. And as a deputy leader for the ruling party, then of course that gives him a head start over everybody else. And he knows that. And that's why he's taking care that things like this Rimuru 3 don't come to the side shows of Rimuru 3, don't crowd that fact that people see him as a leader for the gamer community.
What do you feel about his expression of the need to control the politics of Nairobi. That has never been, fine, Mount Kenya is closest to this city, but the politics of Nairobi has always been controlled by voters from elsewhere.
Yeah. Okay, for Nairobi is one of the places where a lot of people watch, and for a very long time when you go to Kirinyaga Road, you go to Kamukonji, there are the people doing business. And when Gakuya was coming out, you say people from elsewhere are coming and doing business here and we are left out. It's a very strong political statement that we are having battles. There are people who are trying to face him out, and that's why he's trying to control it, because they believe in Nairobi, if you take control through Nairobi, then you are an upper hand before some other people. Again, I feel like people are also waiting for President Uhuru to speak, and because the way he left, it was not really clear of how Mount Kenya are going to forge. There are people who still believe that Uhuru Kenyatta has a voice in Mount Kenya, because anytime he comes out, whether it's a formal event, he has gone to church, whatever he says, it's taken so seriously, and it raises debates. When you go to these vernacular radio stations, you'd feel a strong urge of angeendelea kuongea. Let's hear what is in his mind. And I think that's why also Gachagua extended the apologies to the former First Lady Mama Ngina, so that I think when he comes out, whatever he would say, it will have some weight in Mount Kenya politics.
And looking at his political strategy, the choice of battles to fight says a lot. Party position, party shareholding, now Nairobi. That's what do you think is his end game for that?
There is no question about the fact that Nairobi has a 60% percentage of the Kenyan economy. They say about 60 to 70% of the total national economy, meaning that if you control that, you're controlling 70% of the economy of this country. And that's where he's talking about him and his community being felt, because they supposedly they are the economy holders, the whole economy, but the political power is elsewhere. He would wish that was to shift for once, so that they hold the economic power as well as the political power in Nairobi. That, in my opinion, is what he's trying to say. That we need to take control of these behemoths that we run. We shouldn't be at the top, and is being run by somebody else. On party politics, remember that is a requirement by all their constitutions that they hold elections. In some of them is every year, in some of them is every 2 years. And I don't know, Fred, the last time you had ODM holding elections.
They've promised they're going to try around this time.
UDA holding elections, KANU holding elections, Jubilee holding elections. Basically meaning that if you're not following your constitution, what does that mean? You're illegal. Meaning that we don't have a single legal political party in Kenya. We don't.
Okay.
So what UDA is trying to do is to legitimize themselves again, so they can question others. Because today, no one can question the other for not holding elections. And that's why they're struggling to ensure that they do something like an election that will lead to a national delegates conference based on the people that are elected. It doesn't matter even if you do in two counties.
Then
have those people,
by acclamation.
You go to Kasarani, do by acclamation, you become the first legal political party. Because as soon as you don't hold your elections, the officials are in office illegally.
Okay.
So you can't talk about a party.
All right, interesting. And when it comes to Mount Kenya politics, very interesting stories on page 6 of the Standard. As we come to the end of this conversation, and you alluded to this, Bwana Mwathi, and you said someone had not received their check by last week. But Raila's bid for the AUC chairman's post has been a big talking point this week, especially after that outburst by Raila Odinga last week, calling out the government, something he had not done for a number of months. And people are feeling, probably it's because of his endearment and his dalliance with the president over this promise of a job. He came out, and after that, everyone is asking a question. I think Taifa Leo asked Kunani, what's happening? What's up? Bwana Mwathi has his own assessment. What is yours?
Okay. That seat, the AU chairman, is it's a tricky one, to say the truth, for Raila. He's facing opposition, but the politics that are being said around it, even from other countries. We have a factor of age, for his age. We have a factor of also the country that he comes from. You see, these other African countries have a special, or has a reservation about Kenya. We don't come out strongly.
We're not generally nice people.
Yeah. So, and for instance, I was following it and I found that the candidate from, I think it's Somalia, already has like 30 votes. So I think also Raila is feeling it.
Do you think that his outburst was informed by a realization, probably, that probably this AU chairman's position is out of sight for him?
His reach, yeah.
Out of reach.
Yeah, I feel that is what he's feeling right now, and he has to also secure his position here in Kenya. Ile ikianguka, I know where to fall back. So.
Okay. What do you think is happening?
The monthly check did not come through.
It has nothing to do with AU.
In time. No, it has to do with AU, because you remember after that outburst the following day, that's when we started seeing this campaign poster for the Somali candidate saying that 30 countries have whatever. My friend, that's propaganda. I mean, as a candidate, you must keep showing that you have the support of everybody. You remember, our last general election, Raila was winning by 14 million votes. I think everybody was voting for him in the propaganda machinery. So in every campaign, there's propaganda. Actually, the biggest threat is from the former prime minister of I think the deputy prime minister for Djibouti. That's the biggest threat. That's a man to watch. Okay. And yes, of course, with that campaign, it must have come to his mind that, hey, hold on. The government of Kenya promised to put together a committee for campaign. What do you call it? Is flying all over the continent for campaign. And some money was supposed to be allocated. And that's, I think, 2 weeks ago. And we haven't seen any activity in terms of forming that high-level committee and high-level team that will be going across African continent to go and negotiate on his behalf. No one has gone anywhere except him going to Uganda to meet Museveni, which was watered down immediately by Kikwete going there. So really, you reach a point and say, hold on.
What's happening?
I was promised this. If this lady is saying that she has a support of 30 countries, there must be some campaign going on. I'm forgetting the word for it. You're flying around to be able to do the campaign.
The shuttle diplomacy.
The shuttle diplomacy. Yes. Shuttle diplomacy is the word I'm looking for. There must be some shuttle diplomacy. So if she's saying 30, maybe it's not 30, but maybe it's 10. But do I have one? Do I have one? No.
But should he be depending too much on the Kenyan government for that kind of...
The candidate is presented by his country.
Okay.
Who sits at the top committee, the top body in the AU, the President's Commission, is Dr. William Ruto. So if Dr. William Ruto doesn't propose him, he has no chance. So, and then, of course, there is a government that is supposed to say that this is a man that we want to present, or this is a woman that we want to present for you to be the next chairperson. But remember, one of the things I like telling people is that the AU Chair Commission is not a chairmanship. It's a CEO. It's like when the KPLC, Siror is the CEO. Mrs. Mudivo is the chairperson. It's not Mudivo. You're taking him to Siror. The day-to-day running.
8 to 5.
Finance, 8 to 5. Come on, at 77. Are you joking? They would be crazy to vote him in.
Anything else to add as a final thought? We have about 30 seconds to go. Susan, your parting shot.
My parting shot would be on the floods. would really ask the government to be a bit serious on whatever they are doing about the situation on the ground is crazy. Like Maimahio, we've not found everyone who passed on. They're still covered down there. So let's be a bit serious. And also we are having the dams and the rivers that are still coming to speed with the filling up. So they should try to see that we are not pushed to those levels where people are displaced. First, they should come up and do a thing.
There's something we've missed talking about today, the housing levy and the fact that now it's gone to landlords, small businesses, 1.5% to everyone. And that, when I saw that letter yesterday, the words of Winston Churchill rang very loudly in my mind, that he contends that to task your nation, to desire to tax your people for prosperity of the nation. He didn't use the same words, but I would use them. It's stupidity. It's lack of whatever, wisdom. And I think it's high time the people that are leading this country start thinking twice about the fact that they want to tax this country to prosperity. You can't do it. If anything, you need to just read a bit of history, go to the Windows tax of 1696 in the UK, where the king had to tax more people, and he taxed everything else, and then he decided, I'm going now to tax the windows. First, he started with the size of windows. People reduced the windows. Then he said, no, I'll tax the number of windows. And people actually reduced completely, and that's why you get this daylight robbery, because the king was stealing their daylight into their houses, and they reduced them. And that's why you find the houses in Kenya have small houses, because they still follow that. Mr. President, in your cabinet, gang of cabinet,